There are moments in life when the world doesn't fall apart all at once. It comes undone quietly, one ordinary morning at a time, until you suddenly realize you're standing in the middle of ruins that used to be your home. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 36 years old, a mother of two, and until the spring of last year, I believed my family was unbreakable. Looking back now, I think that's the most dangerous kind of belief. Because when you trust someone with your whole heart, you stop looking for cracks. You stop questioning strange behavior. You explain away every uncomfortable feeling. You tell yourself you're simply overthinking. That's exactly what I did. And it almost cost me everything. The morning my wife boarded a plane to Europe began like every other Tuesday. The alarm rang at 6:30. The coffee machine gurgled in the kitchen. Our golden retriever Cooper scratched at the back door, asking to be let outside. Sunlight filtered through the white curtains, painting soft stripes across the hardwood floor. Everything looked peaceful. Everything looked normal. But appearances can be incredibly convincing. I stood at the kitchen counter packing lunches for our children. Our daughter Lily was 9. Our son Noah had just turned 6. Lily loved drawing little flowers on her lunch bags with colorful markers. Noah preferred dinosaur stickers. Small things. Ordinary things. The kinds of routines that make a family feel safe. My wife, Rachel, walked downstairs dressed in a beige travel suit with a cream-colored coat folded neatly over her arm. Her suitcase rolled quietly behind her. She looked elegant, confident, excited. Too excited. She kissed the top of Lily's head. Be good for Mom. Then she hugged Noah. I'll bring you something amazing from Paris. Paris. At least that's what she told us. A 2-week marketing conference across Europe. Her company had supposedly chosen her to represent their regional office. I remember smiling proudly. You deserve this, I said. I know how hard you've worked. She smiled back. It wasn't forced. It wasn't nervous. If anything, it looked almost relieved. I didn't understand that expression then. Now I do. Rachel had always been ambitious. That was one of the reasons I admired her. While I worked remotely as a freelance graphic designer, she climbed the corporate ladder at an international consulting company. She loved airports, business meetings, new cities, fancy hotels. I preferred quiet evenings, family movie nights, homemade dinners. We balanced each other. Or at least I believed we did. Our differences never felt like problems. They felt like pieces of the same puzzle. I couldn't have been more wrong. The ride to the airport lasted 45 minutes. We laughed about old vacation memories. We argued playfully about which European chocolates she should bring back. She promised to video call every night. Before walking into the terminal, she hugged me tightly. Longer than usual. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. She looked at me for a second, almost as if she wanted to say something else. Then she turned around and disappeared into the crowd. That was the last time I saw my wife as the person I thought she was. Life settled into a temporary routine. The kids missed her, but children adapt faster than adults. Every evening we sat together on the couch. Sometimes Rachel called. Sometimes she claimed meetings had run late. Sometimes the connection mysteriously failed. I believed every excuse. Time zones. Busy schedules. Conference dinners. Nothing unusual. Until the 4th day. That was when the first crack appeared. It started with something so small most people would have ignored it. Our mail carrier knocked instead of leaving the envelopes in the mailbox. Emily, he said gently. Everything okay? I smiled. Of course. He hesitated. There have been people coming by the house asking questions. I frowned. What kind of people? He shrugged. I don't know. They weren't wearing uniforms. They just asked if the children lived here. They asked if an adult was always home. A strange chill crawled across my shoulders. I laughed awkwardly. Probably someone with the wrong address. He nodded politely. But something in his face suggested he wasn't convinced. Neither was I. That evening I tried calling Rachel. No answer. I texted her. No reply. Hours later she finally responded. Busy day. Dinner with clients. Talk tomorrow. Love you. Just one short message. No heart emoji. No picture. Rachel always sent pictures. Every trip. Every hotel. Every restaurant. Every airport. But not this time. I told myself she was simply exhausted. I wanted to believe that. Sometimes hope is just another form of denial. The following afternoon, someone rang the front doorbell. Twice. Firmly. I opened the door expecting a package. Instead, two strangers stood on my porch. A middle-aged woman with kind but serious eyes. A younger man carrying a tablet. The woman smiled professionally. Mrs. Carter? Yes. I'm Diane Foster. This is Michael Hayes. We're with Child Protective Services. For a second, I honestly thought they had the wrong house. I'm sorry. I think there's been a mistake. Diane's expression didn't change. We received a report concerning the welfare of your children. My heart stopped. What? I don't understand. May we come inside? Every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. But I stepped aside. Because innocent people don't think they have anything to hide. I had no idea that someone had already spent weeks creating a story about me. And according to that story, I wasn't the loving mother I believed myself to be. I was the danger. The next hour felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Diane walked through our home with calm professionalism. She checked the kitchen, the children's bedrooms, the refrigerator, medicine cabinet, smoke detectors. Michael quietly took notes. Lily sat on the couch clutching her stuffed rabbit. Noah hid behind my legs. I tried to stay calm. Inside, I was falling apart. Finally, Diane sat across from me. There was an anonymous report. What report? She looked at her folder. It alleges prolonged neglect. I stared at her. Neglect. It also claims the children are frequently left alone. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. I work from home. I'm with them every day. My neighbors see us. The school knows me. The pediatrician knows us. Diane nodded. We're simply required to investigate. Then she asked a question that made my blood run cold. Where is your spouse? In Europe. For work. She wrote something down. When did she leave? 4 days ago. Another note. Do you have documentation? I blinked. What? Flight information. Conference details. I swallowed. No. I never thought I'd need them. Diane closed the folder. Mrs. Carter. Someone provided us with a great deal of detailed information. Detailed. That word echoed inside my head. Anonymous reports are usually vague. This one wasn't. Whoever made it knew us, knew our routines, knew Rachel had left the country, knew exactly when she boarded that plane. And suddenly, for the first time, I wasn't wondering why CPS was standing in my living room. I was wondering who wanted them there. The moment the CPS investigators drove away, I stood in the middle of my living room and realized I had forgotten how to breathe. The house was silent. Not peaceful. Just silent. Lily sat on the stairs hugging her knees, watching me with eyes far too old for a 9-year-old. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, still clutching the little blue dinosaur he'd carried everywhere since preschool. I looked around our home. The framed family photos. The stack of library books on the coffee table. The half-finished puzzle Lily and I had been working on. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet nothing felt familiar anymore. Someone had walked into my life without ever opening the front door. Someone knew enough about my family to convince Child Protective Services that my children were in danger. And I couldn't stop asking myself one question. Why? That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made me sit upright. A car slowing down. A dog barking in the distance. The wind brushing against the maple tree outside our bedroom window. My imagination turned every ordinary noise into another threat. At 3 in the morning I reached for my phone. No messages from Daniel. I opened our conversation. The last text he'd sent 6 hours earlier read, "Long meetings today. Heading to dinner with clients. Miss you." It sounded normal. Maybe too normal. For the first time in 12 years, I noticed how carefully he always chose his words. Short. Neat. Predictable. Almost rehearsed. I pressed the video call button. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it disconnected. A minute later, another text appeared. Can't talk. In a presentation. Love you. I stared at the screen. A presentation. At nearly 4 in the morning Paris time, I quickly opened the world clock on my phone. Paris. 3:52 a.m. No conference presentation in the world started before sunrise. I told myself maybe he had traveled to another country. Maybe London. Maybe Madrid. Maybe. I stopped. Why was I making excuses for something that made no sense? The next morning I dropped the kids at school with a smile I didn't feel. Parents waved as they hurried toward work. Teachers greeted children at the entrance. Life continued as though nothing had happened. I envied them. They didn't know what it felt like to wonder if strangers believed you were hurting your own children. When I reached my car, my phone rang. Diane Foster. The CPS investigator. My stomach tightened. Mrs. Carter? Yes. I'd like to ask a few follow-up questions. Of course. Has your husband contacted you today? No. Has he spoken with the children? No. There was a pause. Then she asked softly, "Does that seem unusual?" I hesitated. It does. Daniel never missed a bedtime call. Never. Even during business trips. Especially with Noah. He always insisted on hearing about dinosaur facts before bed. Diane thanked me politely before ending the call. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. But when it ended, I realized something. She hadn't sounded suspicious of me anymore. She had sounded curious about Daniel. I decided to stop guessing. I opened my laptop and searched for the conference Daniel claimed to be attending. European Business Innovation Summit. He had repeated that name dozens of times before leaving. Nothing. I searched again. Different wording. Nothing. I searched conference calendars. Corporate event listings. International convention centers. Still nothing. No advertisements. No schedules. No speakers. No registration page. Nothing. It was as if the conference had never existed. A cold weight settled in my chest. Maybe I remembered the name wrong. I opened my email. Daniel had forwarded me what he called his itinerary a week before the trip. The email was gone. I searched every folder. Inbox. Archive. Trash. Nothing. I frowned. I never deleted important emails. Never. Someone had. That afternoon I logged into our online bank account to pay the electric bill. A notification appeared before the balance loaded. Recent password change confirmed. Password change? I hadn't changed anything. I tried signing in again. Access denied. I reset the password using my recovery email. When I finally entered the account, my heartbeat quickened. 3 international wire transfers. $20,000 each. Sent 2 days before Daniel boarded his flight. Recipient. Aurelia Holdings Ltd. Location. Portugal. $60,000. Gone. No explanation. No note. No conversation. Daniel and I discussed every expense over $500. Or at least, I thought we did. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. 5 minutes later my phone buzzed. Instead of Daniel's name, an unknown number appeared. I answered carefully. Hello. A woman's voice. Calm. Professional. Mrs. Carter? Yes. My name is Linda Brooks. I'm the attendance counselor at Lincoln Elementary. My pulse quickened. Is Lily okay? She's fine. I just wanted to clarify something. What? We received an email this morning stating your children would be withdrawn from school next week. I nearly dropped the phone. What? The request was submitted under your husband's name. I never approved that. Linda paused. So, it wasn't sent by you? No. Absolutely not. She thanked me and promised no changes would be made without speaking to me in person. When the call ended, I sat frozen inside my car. Withdrawn from school? Why? Daniel had never mentioned moving. Never mentioned homeschooling. Nothing. It made no sense. Well, he never intended to come back. For the first time in our marriage, I opened the small fireproof safe inside Daniel's office. He always told me it contained insurance papers and tax documents. The code still worked. Our anniversary. Inside were neatly organized folders, property records, investment statements, retirement accounts. Then I noticed something unusual. A dark blue envelope with no label. Inside, a second passport application. Daniel's photograph. A different signature. A different last name. Daniel Brooks. Issued 6 months earlier. I stared at the page, unable to process what I was seeing. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. Because the alternative was impossible. My husband had secretly created another identity, and I had never noticed. The front doorbell rang. I jumped so hard the passport slipped from my hands. When I opened the door, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, stood on the porch holding a casserole dish. I thought you might not feel like cooking. I smiled weakly. Thank you. She hesitated. Emily. Can I tell you something? Of course. I almost didn't. But after those CPS people came yesterday. She lowered her voice. I saw a man parked across the street 3 different times last week. What man? I don't know. He kept taking pictures of your house. My skin prickled. Pictures. She nodded. I assumed he was with the city. But now. She looked toward the street. I'm not so sure. When was the last time you saw him? The morning Daniel left. I felt the ground shift beneath me. The morning Daniel left. Not before. Not after. Exactly that morning. As though someone had been waiting for him to leave before making the next move. That evening, after the children were asleep, I spread everything across the dining room table. The bank records. The fake conference notes. The second passport application. The school email. Every piece by itself looked confusing. Together, they looked like a plan. Not a mistake. A plan. One carefully built over months. Maybe longer. Then my phone vibrated. For one impossible second I thought it was Daniel. It wasn't. It was Diane Foster. Her voice sounded different this time. More urgent. Mrs. Carter. Yes. I need to ask you something. Of course. Has your husband ever discussed relocating your children outside the United States? I felt every muscle in my body go still. No. Why? There was silence. Then she answered with words that shattered the last piece of certainty I had left. Because someone submitted documents claiming you had agreed to give him full custody before his trip to Europe. I couldn't speak. My throat closed. My hands began to shake. I never signed anything, I whispered. I know, Diane replied quietly. And that's exactly why I'm calling. For a few seconds I couldn't answer. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. I never signed anything, I repeated, this time louder. I would never give up my children. I believe you, Diane said gently. But I need you to listen carefully. There was something in her voice that made my heart pound even harder. This investigation may be different from what we first believed. I leaned against the kitchen counter because my knees suddenly felt too weak to hold me. What do you mean? The documents we received appear unusually detailed. I swallowed. Detailed how? They include copies of school records, medical information, photographs inside your home, and statements describing your daily routine. I closed my eyes. Someone hadn't just reported me. Someone had studied me. Someone knew where my children slept. Someone knew what time we left for school. Someone knew which bedroom belonged to Lily and which one belonged to Noah. The thought made my skin crawl. After hanging up, I checked every lock in the house. Twice. Then I walked from room to room, pulling the curtains shut. For the first time since we bought that beautiful little house 6 years earlier, it didn't feel like home. It felt exposed. Every window seemed too large. Every shadow looked unfamiliar. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching us long before CPS knocked on my door. The next morning I made pancakes because Noah always smiled when I made dinosaur-shaped pancakes. Children deserve normal mornings, even when the adults are falling apart. Lily watched me quietly while I poured orange juice into their glasses. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. Are those people coming back? I forced a smile. I don't know. Did we do something wrong? My heart broke. No. You didn't do anything wrong. She looked down at her plate. They were just making sure everyone was safe. Are we safe? I hesitated. That tiny pause lasted less than a second. But children notice everything. Yes, I whispered. We're together. And as long as we're together, we'll be okay. I hoped I wasn't lying. After dropping the kids at school, I drove straight to Daniel's office. His company occupied the 10th floor of a modern glass building downtown. The receptionist smiled politely. Good morning. I'm here to speak with my husband, Daniel Carter. Her smile faded ever so slightly. I'm sorry. Daniel. Yes. She typed something into her computer, then looked back at me with confusion. Mrs. Carter. Daniel hasn't worked here for almost 3 months. The words didn't register. I'm sorry. He resigned. I stared at her. No. That's impossible. He left for a business conference in Europe this week. She slowly shook her head. I think there's been a misunderstanding. He resigned 92 days ago. 92 days. For 3 months, my husband had pretended to leave for work every morning. For 3 months. Where had he actually been? I walked back to my car without remembering how I got there. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't fit the key into the ignition. He had lied. Not once. Not twice. Every single day. Every goodbye kiss. Every lunch packed for work. Every complaint about traffic. Every story about difficult meetings. Every late-night conference call. Every one of them. A lie. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. 12 years. How do you hide an entire second life from someone who sleeps beside you every night? My phone buzzed. It was my younger sister, Megan. Emily. You sound awful. I'm fine. No, you're not. I hadn't told anyone about CPS. Not even my family. But the words came pouring out before I could stop them. Everything. The anonymous report. Daniel's fake trip. The missing money. The second passport. His resignation. Silence. Long silence. Finally Megan spoke. I didn't want to say anything. My stomach tightened. What? There was a woman. I felt my breath catch. What woman? I saw Daniel with someone about 2 months ago. The world seemed to stop spinning. You what? I was at Riverside Cafe. I thought maybe it was a client. They were laughing. Holding hands. I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. Why didn't you tell me? I honestly convinced myself I was mistaken. I thought maybe. She stopped. I didn't want to destroy your marriage over something I wasn't sure about. Tears filled my eyes. My marriage was already being destroyed. I just didn't know it. That evening, after the children were asleep, I searched every drawer in Daniel's office again. This time I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for lies. Behind an old filing cabinet, I found a cardboard box covered in dust. Inside were receipts. Gas stations. Hotels. Restaurants. All within driving distance. None in Europe. None connected to business. One receipt caught my attention. A luxury apartment complex called Willow Heights Residences. Monthly parking fee. Paid every month for the past 7 months. We didn't own an apartment there. Lease? I didn't think we did. The next morning, curiosity defeated fear. I drove to Willow Heights. It was beautiful. Modern buildings. Private gardens. Security gates. The kind of place couples moved into when they wanted a fresh start. I parked across the street. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. People came and went. Delivery trucks arrived. Children rode bicycles along the sidewalks. Then, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. I knew that SUV. I had ridden in it hundreds of times. Daniel stepped out. He wasn't in Europe. He wasn't in Paris. He wasn't attending any conference. He was right here. Less than 30 minutes from our home. For a moment I couldn't move. My husband looked relaxed. Happy. He wore the blue jacket I bought him for our 10th anniversary. He smiled as he walked toward Building C. Then the front door opened. A woman ran into his arms. Young. Elegant. Long dark hair blowing in the breeze. She kissed him like she'd been waiting all day. Daniel laughed. The same laugh I used to believe belonged only to me. Then, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, came running outside. She wrapped her tiny arms around Daniel's legs. He picked her up effortlessly. She called him Daddy. The word echoed in my mind. Daddy. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. For 12 years I believed I knew the man I married. Standing across that street, I realized I had been married to a complete stranger. And somehow, deep inside, I knew this wasn't even the worst part. Because if Daniel had built an entirely new family while still married to me, then the CPS report, the fake custody papers, the missing $60,000, they were never random. They were all pieces of the same plan. A plan designed to erase me from my own children's lives. I don't remember driving home from Willow Heights. I only remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my hands were numb. The image of Daniel standing there replayed over and over in my mind. His smile. The woman in his arms. The little girl calling him Daddy. It felt like someone had taken 12 years of my life, shattered them into 1,000 tiny pieces, and scattered them across the road behind me. Every memory suddenly carried a question mark. Every anniversary. Every birthday. Every promise. Had any of it been real? Or had I simply been the woman who made his real life possible? When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for nearly 20 minutes. I couldn't walk inside. How was I supposed to smile at Lily and Noah when my entire world had just collapsed? Children notice everything, especially the things we try hardest to hide. So before opening the front door, I wiped away my tears, practiced a smile in the rearview mirror, and whispered to myself, "Not yet. You can fall apart later. Right now they need their mom." That evening felt strangely ordinary. Lily talked excitedly about an art contest at school. Noah proudly showed me a paper dinosaur he had made in class. I listened. I smiled. I laughed at the right moments. But inside my thoughts were somewhere else. Daniel had lied about Europe. He had lied about his job. He had hidden $60,000. He had another identity. He had another family. None of those lies happened overnight. They took planning, patience, preparation. Which meant one terrifying thing. His plan hadn't started when he boarded that plane. It had started months, maybe years before. After the children were asleep, I spread every document across the dining room table again. The fake conference notes, the bank statements, the passport application, the school withdrawal email. I stared at them until almost midnight. Something was missing. Not evidence. A motive. Why would Daniel go to such extreme lengths? If he wanted a divorce, he could have asked for one. If he wanted to leave, he could have walked away. Instead, someone had involved Child Protective Services. Someone had created fake custody papers. Someone wanted me to look dangerous. Why? Then one sentence from Diane echoed in my mind. The documents were unusually detailed. Detailed enough to convince trained investigators. Detailed enough to put my children at risk. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. The next morning my phone rang just after 8. It was Diane. "Emily," she said, her voice calm but serious, "we've completed a preliminary review of the documents." I held my breath. "And there are inconsistencies." My heart skipped. "What kind?" "The signatures don't match." I closed my eyes. "I knew it." She continued. "Several forms appear to have been digitally altered. So, someone forged them? We can't officially say that yet. But we're investigating." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Tiny. Fragile. But real. That afternoon, I received another unexpected visitor. A man in his early 50s stood on my porch wearing a navy blue suit. He introduced himself as Michael Donovan, a family law attorney. "I believe you know my name," he said. I frowned. "I don't." "You will." He handed me a business card. "I was contacted 3 weeks ago regarding a custody case." My pulse quickened. "Whose case?" "Your husband's." The world seemed to stop. "He hired you." "He tried to." "Tried." Michael nodded. "He wanted me to file for emergency custody." I felt sick. "What did he tell you?" He looked at me carefully before answering. "He claimed you had become emotionally unstable. That you frequently left the children alone. That you refused medical care for them." Each accusation felt like another knife. "They're lies." "I know." I blinked. "You do." I declined to represent him. "Why?" He sighed. "Because his story didn't match the documents he provided." Michael opened a leather folder. "I probably shouldn't be showing you this." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a draft affidavit. Daniel's signature sat neatly at the bottom. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. "Emily Carter is no longer capable of providing a safe environment. The children express fear when left alone with her. Immediate intervention is necessary." None of it was true. Not one sentence. But someone had carefully written a version of me that didn't exist. A version designed to be believed. "I reported my concerns," Michael continued quietly. "To whom?" "The court never received these documents." Relief washed over me. "But," he added, "I've been practicing family law for 26 years. I've rarely seen this level of preparation." His words chilled me. "This wasn't written in a hurry." "No. It was built. Over time." Exactly what I had feared. Daniel hadn't suddenly decided to leave. He had been constructing an escape. And I had never seen it happening. After Michael left, I couldn't stop thinking about Willow Heights. The woman. The little girl. I needed answers. Not guesses. That evening, after Megan agreed to stay with Lily and Noah, I drove back to the apartment complex. This time I parked farther away. I watched buildings see through binoculars I'd borrowed from my neighbor. At exactly 6:17 p.m., Daniel walked outside carrying grocery bags. The woman followed him. They laughed about something. She reached over and straightened his collar. Such a simple gesture. One I used to do every morning before he left for work. Then the little girl ran outside again. Daniel knelt and tied her shoe. She hugged him. He kissed the top of her head. Watching him care for another child while planning to take mine broke something inside me. Not because he loved her, but because he was willing to destroy Lily and Noah to protect the life he'd built with someone else. As I watched, another car pulled into the parking lot. A silver sedan. An older woman stepped out. I recognized her immediately. My breath caught. It was Patricia, Daniel's mother. The grandmother who always claimed she was too busy to visit her own grandchildren. She smiled warmly as the little girl ran into her arms. Daniel hugged her. The mysterious woman hugged her too. They looked like family. A real family. My knees felt weak. His mother knew. Maybe she had always known. All those holidays she canceled. All those weekends she claimed to be traveling. Had she been spending them here? With them? The realization was almost worse than Daniel's betrayal, because betrayal from one person hurts. Betrayal from an entire family changes the way you trust forever. I reached for my phone and quietly took several photographs. Daniel, the woman, the child, his mother. Date and time automatically stamped onto every image. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just collecting heartbreak. I was collecting evidence. As I lowered the phone, it suddenly vibrated in my hand. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. There was no response. Only breathing. Slow. Steady. Then a familiar voice spoke just 4 words. I know you're watching. The line went dead. My blood turned to ice. I looked around the parking lot. Cars. Trees. Apartment balconies. Someone had seen me. Someone knew exactly where I was. And deep in my heart, I realized the game had just changed. Because until that moment, I thought I was uncovering Daniel's secrets. Now I knew. Daniel was still watching me too. The drive home felt longer than it ever had before. Every few minutes, I glanced into my rearview mirror. Not because I expected to see Daniel, because I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was following me. The anonymous phone call echoed in my ears. I know you're watching. Who had called me? Daniel? The woman? Or someone working for them? For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I wasn't just trying to uncover the truth. I was standing in the middle of someone else's carefully planned game, and I had no idea how many players were involved. When I pulled into my driveway, Megan was sitting on the front porch with Lily and Noah. The kids were laughing while Cooper chased a tennis ball across the yard. For one beautiful moment, everything looked normal. Then Noah spotted my car. He ran toward me with his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Mom! I lifted him into my arms, holding him tighter than usual. You okay? Megan asked quietly after the children ran inside. I forced a smile. I'm fine. She crossed her arms. You've said that at least 20 times this week. And every single time it's been a lie. The words hit harder than she intended. Because she was right. I wasn't fine. I was exhausted. Terrified. Heartbroken. But most of all, I was angry. Not the kind of anger that makes you scream. The quiet kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that slowly replaces fear with determination. That night, after the children were asleep, Megan sat across from me at the kitchen table. Every document was spread out between us. The forged custody papers. The bank transfers. The fake conference itinerary. The second passport. The photographs from Willow Heights. She looked at everything without saying a word. Finally, she whispered, Emily. This isn't just an affair. I know. This is something much bigger. I nodded. He planned this. For months. Maybe years. She looked directly at me. So what are you going to do? I stared at Daniel's photograph lying on the table. For days I'd been reacting. Crying. Questioning. Trying to survive. But survival wasn't enough anymore. I'm going to prove every single lie. The next morning I searched online for private investigators. One name appeared repeatedly. Nathan Reyes. Former homicide detective. 28 years with the police department. Known for uncovering financial fraud and family deception. His office occupied the second floor of an old brick building downtown. It wasn't fancy. Just practical. Like the man himself. Nathan looked to be in his early 60s. Silver hair. Calm brown eyes. A notebook already open before I even sat down. He listened without interrupting while I explained everything. The fake Europe trip. CPS. The forged documents. The second passport. The hidden apartment. The other woman. When I finished, the room remained silent. Finally, he asked one question. What are you most afraid of? I didn't answer immediately. Because there were so many things. Losing my marriage. Losing my home. Losing my future. But none of those mattered as much as one truth. I'm afraid he'll take my children. Nathan nodded slowly. Then that's where we begin. He studied the photographs I had taken outside Willow Heights. Good. I blinked. Good. You documented dates and times. I didn't even think about it. You did. Which tells me you're paying attention. He slid one picture closer. The woman. Do you know her name? I shook my head. No. We'll find out. He looked at another photograph. His mother. You recognize her? Yes. Nathan leaned back in his chair. That changes things. Why? Because family members rarely risk everything unless they believe the outcome benefits them too. I felt my stomach tighten. So you think she's involved? I think, he replied carefully, we shouldn't assume anyone is innocent. Before I left, Nathan handed me a small notebook. I want you to write down everything. Everything. Every phone call. Every text. Every strange car. Every conversation. No detail is too small. I looked at the empty pages. Will it help? He smiled. People who lie usually focus on big stories. They forget the little details. The truth lives in the little details. That afternoon, I received another call from Diane Foster. Her tone sounded noticeably different. Warmer. More reassuring. Emily. Yes. I wanted you to know we've reviewed your children's school records. My heart raced. And the teachers describe you as attentive. They mention your volunteer work. They also confirm you're consistently present. I closed my eyes with relief. Thank you. She continued. The pediatrician's records tell a similar story. They describe both children as healthy, up to date on every appointment. Every sentence felt like another brick, rebuilding the life someone had tried to tear down. Then Diane paused. We've also discovered something unusual. What? The anonymous reports didn't come from different people. I frowned. There were several reports. 4. And all 4 were submitted under different names. My heartbeat quickened. But they originated from the same internet account. Someone hadn't simply accused me once. They had built an entire campaign. A campaign designed to convince CPS that multiple people had witnessed my supposed neglect. Whoever planned this understood exactly how the system worked. Nathan called later that evening. I have a name. My pulse jumped. The woman. Yes. I grabbed a pen. Who is she? Her name is Vanessa Collins. The name meant nothing to me. I've never heard of her. She's 32. Works as an interior designer. Recently purchased a condominium. Guess who co-signed the mortgage? I already knew the answer. Daniel. Correct. I felt physically sick. How long? Nathan's voice remained calm. According to available records, they've shared financial accounts for nearly 18 months. 18 months. For a year and a half, my husband had been building another life while kissing me goodbye every morning. Nathan wasn't finished. There's something else. What? The little girl. I held my breath. We're still verifying information. But local records indicate Vanessa listed Daniel as the child's emergency contact. I couldn't speak. Emergency contact. Not a friend. Not a coworker. Parent would usually fill that role. Is she? I couldn't finish the question. Nathan answered gently. We don't know. Not yet. But we'll find out. That night, after everyone was asleep, I walked quietly into Lily's bedroom. Moonlight spilled across her face. She had fallen asleep holding the sketchbook I bought her for Christmas. Across the hall, Noah was curled around his favorite dinosaur. I stood between their rooms for several minutes, watching, listening, remembering. These children had no idea someone was trying to rewrite their family. No idea that paperwork and lies could change lives. No idea how close they had come to being caught in a battle they never asked for. I made a silent promise. No matter how painful the truth became, No matter how many secrets Daniel still hid, no matter how powerful the people standing beside him were, I would protect my children, even if I had to stand alone, because mothers don't stop fighting when they're exhausted. That's exactly when they become the strongest. The following morning, Nathan called again. His voice was more serious than before. Emily, I need you to come to my office. Did you find something? Yes. A lot. Can you tell me over the phone? A long silence filled the line. Finally, he said quietly, No. You need to see this for yourself. When I arrived 20 minutes later, Nathan didn't greet me with his usual calm smile. Instead, he slid a thick manila folder across his desk. Everything in this folder, he said softly, changes the entire case. I looked down at the folder. On the front, in bold black letters, was a name I recognized instantly. Daniel Carter. And underneath it, another name. Daniel Brooks. 2 identities. 1 man. And dozens of documents connecting them. As I slowly opened the folder, one photograph slipped onto the desk. It showed Daniel, Vanessa, the little girl, and standing beside them, a woman I never expected to see, Diane Foster, the CPS investigator. My heart stopped. The photograph slipped from my trembling fingers onto Nathan's desk. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I stared at Diane Foster's face, the same woman who had walked through my home, the same woman who had interviewed my children, the same woman who had looked me in the eyes and promised to follow the evidence. Now she was standing beside Daniel, beside Vanessa, beside the little girl, smiling. My chest tightened. No, I whispered. This can't be real. Nathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up the photograph and looked at it again. What do you see? He asked calmly. I frowned. What do you mean? Look carefully. I leaned closer. It wasn't a family portrait. It looked like it had been taken outdoors. There were balloons, children running in the background, a picnic table covered with birthday decorations. Diane wasn't hugging anyone. She wasn't standing beside Daniel. She was several feet away, talking to an elderly couple. I looked back at Nathan. I don't understand. He nodded. That's why I wanted you to see it instead of telling you over the phone. You assumed the photograph proved they were working together. Yes. It doesn't. He pointed toward the corner of the picture. See the banner? I squinted. The words were partially hidden. Community Family Safety Fair. Nathan continued. Diane attended this event as part of CPS outreach almost a year ago. My shoulders slowly relaxed. So, this picture doesn't prove she's involved. No. It only proves they happen to be at the same public event. A wave of relief washed over me. For 20 terrifying seconds, I'd believed the entire investigation had been compromised. And said, I had almost let fear convince me of something the evidence didn't actually support. Nathan gave me a small smile. This is exactly why we never jump to conclusions. The truth is difficult enough. We don't need to invent more problems. I nodded. He was right. I needed facts, not assumptions. Nathan opened the folder. Now, let's look at what actually matters. Inside were property records, financial statements, business registrations, phone records. Each page seemed more unbelievable than the last. Daniel Brooks, Nathan said, tapping one document, isn't a fake person. I looked up. What? It's a legal alias. He petitioned for the name change almost 2 years ago. How? Because he claimed it was for business branding. I stared at the paperwork. He actually did this legally? Nathan nodded. He wasn't hiding from the government. He was hiding from you. The distinction hurt more than I expected. Daniel hadn't been living in fear. He'd been living with confidence. Confident that I would never discover what he was building. Nathan slid another document across the desk. This condominium at Willow Heights. The mortgage. $500,000. I swallowed. How could he afford that? He couldn't. Nathan turned another page. Not alone. The purchase listed two owners. Daniel Brooks. Vanessa Collins. My eyes moved down the page, then stopped. Another signature. An investor. Patricia Carter. Daniel's mother. I closed my eyes. So she really is involved. Nathan answered carefully. Financially. Yes. Whether she understood the full situation, we don't know. But she helped purchase the property. The room suddenly felt smaller. This wasn't one man's secret anymore. It was a family secret. Nathan leaned forward. I also spoke with someone this morning. Who? A former coworker. My heartbeat quickened. They asked not to be identified. What did they say? They confirmed Daniel stopped talking about you nearly a year ago. I frowned. What do you mean? He introduced Vanessa as his partner. I felt the air leave my lungs. Publicly. Nathan nodded. To clients. To coworkers. At company events. I couldn't process it. While I was planning birthday parties for our children, Daniel had already rewritten his life. He hadn't just been lying at home. He'd been lying to everyone. Nathan reached for another file. This may be the most important discovery. He handed me a printed email chain. The sender's name made my stomach turn. Daniel. The recipient was someone named Ethan Moore. Who's Ethan? Nathan replied. A document consultant. What kind of consultant? He creates legal templates. I looked confused. That's not illegal. No. But listen to this. Nathan pointed toward one sentence. I need the custody forms to appear authentic without raising immediate questions. My pulse raced. He actually wrote that? Yes. But before you get excited, Nathan continued. Ethan never completed the request. Instead, he refused and ended the conversation. So someone else created the forged papers. Nathan nodded. Exactly. We're still trying to identify who. For the first time I realized something important. Not everyone Daniel approached agreed to help him. Some people still chose honesty. That thought gave me a little faith in humanity. As I left Nathan's office, my phone buzzed. It was Diane. Emily. Hi. I wanted to update you. I'm listening. Our supervisors have reviewed the new information. And the active concerns regarding your parenting have been substantially reduced. I stopped walking. What does that mean? It means the evidence doesn't support the original allegations. Tears filled my eyes. So, you believe me? She answered gently. We follow evidence. And right now, the evidence is pointing in a very different direction. For the first time since CPS knocked on my door, I felt the crushing weight on my chest begin to lift. Not because the nightmare was over. It wasn't. But because the truth was finally beginning to speak louder than the lies. That evening, Megan came over with dinner. She watched me read through the investigation folder for nearly an hour. Finally, she asked, "What happens now?" I looked toward the hallway where Lily and Noah were coloring together. I keep fighting. She smiled. That's my sister. I smiled back. It was the first genuine smile I'd managed in days. Small. Fragile. But real. Just before bedtime, Lily walked into the kitchen holding a folded piece of paper. I made this. She handed it to me. It was a drawing. Our family. Me. Lily. Noah. And Daniel. All four of us standing beneath a bright yellow sun. Across the top she'd written, "Families stay together." I felt tears rolling down my cheeks before I realized I was crying. Lily looked worried. Did I spell something wrong? I pulled her into my arms. No, sweetheart. You spelled everything perfectly. She hugged me tightly. I miss Dad. I know. When is he coming home? I couldn't answer, as I honestly didn't know. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. The following morning, Nathan called before sunrise. His voice was unusually tense. Emily. What happened? I found out why Daniel needed those custody papers. I stood frozen in my kitchen. Why? Because there was never a 2-week Europe trip. You already knew that. No. I mean, there was never any plan to return. My heart pounded. What are you saying? Nathan took a slow breath. I have evidence that Daniel and Vanessa purchased one-way airline tickets. Destination. He paused. Portugal. Departure. He looked at the document. 3 days from now. I felt the room begin to spin. 3 days. Daniel wasn't just trying to leave me. He was preparing to leave the country forever. And according to the documents Nathan had uncovered, he intended to take Lily and Noah with him. There are moments when fear quietly transforms into something else. Not courage. Not confidence. Something steadier. A decision. That morning, as I stood in my kitchen listening to Nathan explain that Daniel had purchased one-way tickets to Portugal, I realized I was done waiting for someone else to save my family. For weeks I had reacted to every lie, every forged document, every unexpected phone call, every knock at the door. I had spent my days trying to prove I wasn't the person Daniel wanted the world to believe I was. But now, everything had changed. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't defending myself. I was preparing to fight back. Emily. Nathan's voice brought me back to reality. You still there? Yes. I need you to listen carefully. I'm listening. Don't confront Daniel. My first instinct was exactly the opposite. I want to look him in the eyes. I know. But if he realizes we've uncovered his plan, he'll change it. I closed my eyes. Nathan was right. Daniel had spent months staying one step ahead. I couldn't afford to make an emotional decision now. So what do? We move faster than he does. Within an hour, I was sitting inside the office of Laura Bennett, a family law attorney recommended by Nathan. Unlike the polished offices I'd seen in television dramas, Laura's workspace was simple. Shelves filled with legal books, stacks of neatly organized case files, a framed photograph of 2 children sitting on the corner of her desk. She greeted me with a firm handshake. Nathan told me enough to know this is urgent. I handed her the investigation folder. She read quietly for almost 20 minutes. The room was so silent I could hear the ticking of the clock behind her. Finally, she closed the folder. Emily. This isn't a normal custody dispute. I know. She looked directly into my eyes. This appears to involve forged documents, financial concealment, and a possible attempt to remove children from the country without the other parents' informed consent. Hearing someone else say it out loud made everything feel frighteningly real. What can we do? Laura reached for her calendar. We don't have time to wait. By noon, Laura had prepared emergency paperwork asking the court to prevent either parent from traveling internationally with Lily or Noah until the facts were fully reviewed. She explained every page carefully. This isn't about punishment. It's about protecting the children while the court determines what's true. I signed each document with trembling hands. For the first time in weeks, my signature represented something hopeful instead of something forged. When the final page was complete, Laura smiled gently. Now the process begins. As we walked out of the courthouse, my phone vibrated. Daniel. My heart immediately started racing. For nearly 2 weeks, every conversation had happened through brief text messages. Now he was calling. Laura noticed my expression. You don't have to answer. I stared at the screen. No. I think I do. I answered. Hello. His voice sounded calm, almost cheerful. Hey, I've been trying to reach you. That was another lie. There had been no missed calls, only short messages designed to keep me from asking questions. How's Europe? I asked. A brief pause. Busy. We're visiting another client today. I looked toward Laura, who quietly shook her head, reminding me not to reveal anything. Sounds exhausting. It is. He laughed softly. I'll make it up to you when I get home. The words felt almost unreal. Home. He still spoke as though we shared one. As though Willow Heights didn't exist. As though Vanessa didn't exist. As though another little girl hadn't called him Daddy. I miss the kids, he continued. Can I talk to them tonight? My throat tightened. They're at school. Tell them I love them. I will. Another pause. Then Daniel asked a question that immediately caught my attention. Has anyone been bothering you? I felt every nerve in my body go still. What do you mean? I don't know. You sounded stressed in your texts. He already knew. Maybe not the details, but enough to ask. I forced myself to stay calm. We're fine. Good. I'll see you soon. The call ended. Laura looked at me. He was fishing. I know. He wanted to know whether his plan was working. That afternoon Diane Foster called. Emily. Hi. I wanted to let you know we've completed another review. And the emergency concerns regarding your parenting have officially been removed. I closed my eyes. Relief flooded through me. So the investigation is over? Not exactly. She paused. Our focus has changed. I understood immediately. It isn't me anymore. No. She answered gently. We're now reviewing how the original allegations were created. The truth was finally moving in the right direction. Nathan joined us later that evening. Laura spread several documents across her conference table. There are 2 priorities. She pointed to the first folder. Protect the children. Then the second. Preserve evidence. Nathan nodded. I've continued tracking Daniel's financial activity. What did you find? I asked. He emptied another investment account yesterday. How much? Almost $180,000. Laura sighed. He's accelerating. Nathan agreed. He believes he's close to finishing whatever plan he started. I stared at the figures. Months ago I would have panicked. Now, I noticed something else. Every transfer, every account, every purchase left a trail. Daniel thought he was disappearing. Instead, he was documenting everything. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning I walked downstairs for a glass of water. As I passed Daniel's home office, something caught my eye. The printer. A tiny green light blinked. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered. We hadn't printed anything in days. Curious, I opened the output tray. 1 sheet of paper rested inside. It wasn't new. It had somehow become stuck inside the printer weeks earlier. Across the top were airline reservation details. 2 adult passengers. 3 child reservations. My pulse quickened. 3 children. Daniel and Vanessa only had 1 little girl. Why 3 child tickets? Then I read the passenger names. Vanessa Collins. Sophia Collins. Lily Carter. Noah Carter. My knees nearly gave out. He hadn't just planned to leave with my children. He had already reserved seats for them. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. Without any intention of telling me. The next morning, I rushed the document to Laura's office. She studied it carefully before placing it inside an evidence folder. This is significant. Is it enough? She nodded. It strongly supports what Nathan discovered. She looked at me with quiet determination. Emily. I believe we can stop him. For the first time in weeks. I believed it too. But neither of us knew that Daniel was already making his final preparations. And before the week was over, he would make one last desperate move that none of us saw coming. The moment Laura placed the airline reservation into the evidence folder, I realized something that hadn't occurred to me before. Daniel wasn't just running out of time. So was I. Every hour that passed brought us closer to the departure date on those tickets. 3 days had become 2. 2 would soon become 1. If we made a single mistake, my children could disappear before I ever had the chance to explain the truth. Laura closed the folder carefully. I've already requested an emergency hearing. When? Tomorrow morning. I nodded. And until then? She looked directly at me. Don't tell Daniel what we've found. Act normal. Take the children to school. Answer his calls if he contacts you. But don't reveal anything. Sounded simple. It wasn't. Pretending everything was normal while knowing the person you once trusted was planning to take your children across the ocean felt almost impossible. That afternoon, I picked Lily and Noah up from school. Noah climbed into the back seat holding a paper crown his teacher had helped him make. Look, Mom. I'm the dinosaur king. I laughed despite everything. It suits you. Lily climbed in beside him. She seemed quieter than usual. As I started the car, she looked at me through the rearview mirror. Mom. Yes. Are you and Dad fighting? The question caught me off guard. What makes you ask that? He hasn't called me this week. And Grandma Patricia keeps asking strange questions. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of questions? Lily shrugged. She asked if I'd like to live somewhere with beaches. She said we'd get a fresh start. Every muscle in my body went still. When did she say that? Last month. And she told me not to tell you because it was supposed to be a surprise. I forced myself to keep driving. Inside, my heart was racing. Daniel's plan hadn't just involved forged documents. He had been preparing the children emotionally. Slowly. Carefully. Planting ideas without making them suspicious. It made me sick. That evening, Nathan arrived carrying another file. I have good news. I hadn't heard those words in what felt like forever. What is it? The financial investigation is paying off. He spread several bank statements across the dining table. Daniel transferred money into 3 different accounts. I frowned. Why is that good? Because people trying to disappear usually make mistakes. He pointed to one transaction. This transfer originated from an account that still lists your home address. So it confirms he continued using your shared marital information while secretly funding his second life. Laura smiled slightly. In court, that's difficult to explain away. Nathan nodded. It shows planning, not impulse. Just as we finished reviewing the documents, my phone buzzed. Daniel. Again. Laura looked at me. Speakerphone. I answered. Hi. His voice sounded warm. Comforting. The same voice that used to make me feel safe. How's everyone? We're okay. I've got some exciting news. My stomach tightened. Oh. My meeting's wrapped up early. I'm coming home sooner than expected. I exchanged a quick glance with Nathan. When? Tomorrow night. Tomorrow. One day earlier than the itinerary he'd shown me weeks ago. He was changing the schedule. Nathan quietly wrote something on his notepad and slid it toward me. He's adjusting because something changed. Keep talking. I swallowed. The kids will be happy. I've missed them. There was a pause. Then Daniel asked casually, Has CPS contacted you again? The room fell silent. I forced myself to answer naturally. They followed up. And they said everything looks fine. Another pause. Longer this time. Then he laughed softly. That's great. But something about that laugh felt different. Smaller. Less confident. Almost disappointed. When the call ended, Nathan spoke immediately. He expected a different answer. Laura agreed. If his plan depended on CPS believing those allegations, today's update changes everything. The next morning, we arrived at the courthouse before sunrise. I had never imagined I'd be walking into a courtroom to protect my children from their own father. The waiting area was nearly empty. A few attorneys reviewed files. Families sat quietly on wooden benches. Everyone carried their own private heartbreak. At exactly 8:45, Laura received a message on her phone. She read it once. Then looked up. The judge has signed the temporary travel restriction. I blinked. What does that mean? It means neither you nor Daniel can take Lily or Noah out of the country without court approval. For a second I couldn't speak. The first major piece of Daniel's plan had just collapsed. without him even knowing. Outside the courtroom, Diane Foster approached us. She was carrying a slim folder under one arm. "Emily." She smiled warmly. "I wanted to tell you in person." "What?" "The formal concerns regarding your parenting have been closed." My eyes filled with tears. "Officially?" She nodded. "The evidence simply doesn't support the original allegations." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for weeks. Diane continued. "However," my heart skipped. "There is now an active review regarding the origin of those allegations." She couldn't discuss the details, but I understood what she meant. The investigation hadn't ended. It had changed direction. As Nathan drove me home, he remained unusually quiet. Finally, I asked, "What are you thinking?" He kept his eyes on the road. "I'm thinking Daniel doesn't know we've stopped him. Yet. And that's dangerous." "Why?" "Because desperate people become unpredictable." Those words stayed with me all afternoon. That evening, while helping Noah with his homework, the front doorbell rang. Once, twice, 3 firm knocks. I looked through the peephole. My breath caught. Standing on my porch, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, was Daniel. He smiled the moment I opened the door, as if nothing had happened, as if he had truly just returned from Europe, as if he hadn't spent the last several weeks building another life while trying to erase me from my children's. "Surprise," he said softly. Before I could answer, Noah heard his voice. "Dad." He came running down the hallway. Daniel knelt with open arms. Noah threw himself into the embrace without hesitation. Watching my son hug the man who had planned to take him away from me was one of the hardest moments of my life. I wanted to pull him back. I wanted to confront Daniel. I wanted to ask him why. Instead, I stayed silent. Because Nathan had been right. The truth wasn't ready yet. And if I showed Daniel what I knew, he might still find another way to run. Daniel looked up at me over Noah's shoulder. For just a split second, his smile faded. His eyes moved past me, toward the hallway, toward the dining table, where, without realizing it, I'd left Nathan's notebook lying open. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Not to fear. Recognition. He had seen the notebook. And somehow, I knew he understood exactly what it meant. The moment Daniel's eyes settled on the notebook, my heart skipped. It wasn't a dramatic reaction. He didn't gasp. He didn't ask questions. He simply looked at it for half a second too long. Then he smiled again. The kind of smile that never reached his eyes. I realized something in that instant. He was no longer trying to convince me. He was trying to figure out how much I knew. I quietly stepped into the hallway, placing myself between Daniel and the dining room table. "Why don't you help Noah unpack your suitcase?" I said as calmly as I could. Daniel nodded. "Sounds good, buddy." Noah grabbed his father's hand with complete trust. Watching them walk upstairs together nearly broke me. Children love without suspicion. They don't know what betrayal looks like. And they shouldn't have to. As soon as they disappeared upstairs, I slipped into the kitchen and called Nathan. He answered on the first ring. "He's here." There was a brief silence. "When did he arrive?" "Just now." "Did he say anything?" "No." "But he saw your notebook." Nathan's voice became more serious. "Don't confront him." "I won't. I'm on my way." "What if he tries to leave with the kids?" "He won't." "Not today." "How can you be sure?" "Because if he senses you've discovered everything, he'll spend today collecting information, not taking risks." I hoped Nathan was right. Dinner that evening felt like a performance. Daniel told stories about meetings in Europe. He described restaurants in Lisbon, hotels in Paris, train rides through northern Spain. Every detail sounded believable. If I hadn't already known the truth, I probably would have believed every word. Lily listened carefully. "So you really went to Paris?" Daniel smiled. "I sure did." "What was your favorite part?" "The Eiffel Tower looked beautiful at night." I quietly looked down at my plate. Nathan had already confirmed Daniel had never left the country. Yet he lied so naturally that even I found myself picturing the places he described. That frightened me more than anything. Because convincing lies are often built from small pieces of truth. After the children went to bed, Daniel walked onto the back porch. "I've missed this place," he said. The evening air was cool. Fireflies floated across the yard. For years, this porch had been our favorite place to sit after the kids fell asleep. Now it felt unfamiliar. He leaned against the railing. "You've been quiet." "I'm tired." "I bet." He looked at me carefully. "Everything okay while I was gone?" There it was. Another test. Another attempt to measure what I knew. I shrugged. "Just busy with the kids." He nodded slowly. "I heard CPS stopped by." I turned toward him. "You knew." His expression didn't change. "You mentioned it in a text." I was worried. That wasn't true. I had never explained what happened, only that we needed to talk when he got home. Another lie. Small. Carefully placed. Designed to make me question my own memory. I simply replied, "We handled it." He smiled. "I'm glad." But his shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, as though he had just received the answer he'd been hoping for. The next morning before Daniel woke up, Laura called. "The judge signed the second order." "What order?" "It requires Daniel to surrender all passports belonging to the children until the hearing." Relief washed over me. "So he can't leave with them?" "Not legally." She paused. "But Emily." "Yes. We still need to be careful. If he realizes the court has acted, he may become unpredictable." Those words echoed Nathan's warning. Desperate people become unpredictable. Around 9 o'clock, Daniel announced he needed to run a few errands. "I'll be back before lunch." He grabbed his keys and left. The moment his SUV disappeared around the corner, Nathan pulled into my driveway. He carried a laptop in a thick envelope. "I've been waiting for him to leave." "What did you find?" Nathan opened the envelope. Inside was a timeline. Photographs. Phone records. Financial transactions. Everything arranged by date. "This," he said, "is Daniel's real schedule for the last 18 months. We sat at the dining table for over an hour. Every page revealed another secret. The apartment lease. Joint utility bills. Private school inquiries for the little girl. Weekend hotel receipts." Then Nathan pointed to a series of calendar entries. "Look at these dates." I frowned. They were birthdays. Anniversaries. School concerts. Family vacations. First they looked familiar. Then I noticed something. Whenever Daniel told me he had a business trip, the records placed him at Willow Heights. Every missed anniversary. Every late meeting. Every canceled holiday. He hadn't been working. He'd been living a second life. Then Nathan showed me the final page. A printed copy of a property application. The address wasn't in Portugal. It was in Porto, a coastal city where Daniel planned to relocate. The application listed 4 future occupants. Daniel Brooks, Vanessa Collins, Sophia Collins, and Noah Carter. I searched the page again. Lily's name wasn't there. My heart sank. "Where's Lily?" Nathan's face grew grim. "We're still trying to understand that." A cold fear settled over me. Daniel intended to take Noah, but not Lily. Why? The thought was unbearable. I couldn't imagine explaining to one child why her father wanted to take her brother but leave her behind. Nathan gently closed the folder. "We don't know if this application was ever finalized, but it's evidence of planning." I nodded slowly. Every answer seemed to create 2 new questions. Just after noon, Megan rushed through the front door without knocking. She looked pale. "What happened?" I asked. She held up her phone. "I just got a message." "From who?" "Patricia, Daniel's mother." The message was short. "Please keep Emily calm today. Things are about to change, but it's for everyone's future." Nathan immediately stood. "When was this sent?" "5 minutes ago." He looked at me. I don't like this. Neither did I. Something was happening. And judging by Patricia's words, it was happening today. Nathan called Laura immediately. Within minutes, she contacted the court. At almost the same time, Diane Foster called with another update. Emily. We've located additional evidence regarding the forged custody documents. What kind? The digital files were created at a commercial print center. Can you trace who used it? We're working with investigators now. For the first time, it felt like every piece of the puzzle was moving at once. The court. CPS. Nathan. Laura. The truth was catching up to Daniel. But would it catch him in time? At exactly 2:17 p.m., Nathan's phone rang. He answered quickly. His expression changed instantly. He looked at me. Emily. What? Our surveillance team just called. My heart pounded. They've located Daniel. Where is he? Nathan swallowed. He's at the elementary school. The room fell silent. Lily and Noah were still in class. I felt the blood drain from my face. What is he doing there? Nathan listened for another few seconds before answering. He told the office staff he's picking the children up early. I was already reaching for my car keys, because in that moment I knew exactly what this was. Daniel had realized his carefully planned escape was slipping away, and he had decided not to wait another day. He was making his move. There is a kind of fear that doesn't make you scream. It makes everything around you disappear. The roads, the traffic, the sound of your own breathing. All you can think about is getting to the people you love before it's too late. That was exactly how I felt as I drove toward Lincoln Elementary. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. Nathan sat beside me, speaking calmly into his phone. Stay with the front office, he told someone. Do not let the children leave with anyone until law enforcement arrives. He ended the call and looked at me. They've already alerted the principal. What if he gets to them first? He won't if the school follows procedure. I wanted to believe him, but fear doesn't listen to logic. It only whispers the worst possibilities. Every red light felt personal. Every slow-moving car felt like an obstacle between me and my children. I glanced at the clock. 2:24 p.m. School dismissal wasn't for another 40 minutes. If Daniel convinced the office staff he had permission to pick them up early, if he showed forged paperwork, if someone believed him, I couldn't finish the thought. Nathan noticed my shaking hands. Emily. I didn't answer. Look at me. For just a second I took my eyes off the road. We're going to get there. You don't know that. No. But panicking won't get us there any faster. I nodded. Took a deep breath. And kept driving. At Lincoln Elementary, the atmosphere had already changed. Teachers stood near classroom doors. The receptionist kept glancing toward the main entrance. The principal, Mrs. Evelyn Harris, was speaking quietly with a school resource officer. When Daniel had arrived 20 minutes earlier, he'd smiled politely, just as he always did. He told the receptionist there had been a change in family travel plans. He needed to take Lily and Noah home immediately. He even presented paperwork. At first glance, everything appeared official, but Mrs. Harris had noticed something unusual. Daniel almost always arrived with Emily, or Emily called ahead. Today, neither had happened. Instead of releasing the children, she'd quietly asked him to wait in the conference room while the office verified the request. It was a small decision, one that would soon change everything. Daniel sat alone in the conference room, checking his watch every few seconds. His foot tapped impatiently against the floor. He remained calm on the outside, but every passing minute made him more uneasy. He hadn't expected delays. He certainly hadn't expected questions. When the receptionist returned with a polite smile, he stood immediately. Everything okay? We're just waiting for one final confirmation. Daniel nodded. Of course. He smiled again. The same practiced smile that had fooled so many people. But not today. I pulled into the school parking lot, so quickly that I barely remembered turning off the engine. Before the car had fully stopped, I was already running. Nathan followed close behind. The front office doors flew open. Mrs. Harris met us halfway down the hallway. "Mrs. Carter? Where are my children?" "They're safe." The words hit me like fresh air after being underwater. I nearly collapsed with relief. "Where's Daniel?" She lowered her voice. "Conference room." "He doesn't know you're here." Nathan stepped forward. "Keep it that way." Before anyone could move, another vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Laura Bennett stepped out carrying a folder. Behind her came Diane Foster. And moments later, 2 uniformed police officers. Everything was happening at once. The hallway suddenly filled with quiet urgency. No shouting. No panic. Just professionals moving quickly. One officer spoke with Mrs. Harris. Another remained near the conference room entrance. Diane approached me. "Emily." I looked at her. "The children are safe. They've been moved to another classroom." I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "Thank you." She squeezed my hand gently. "We're not finished yet." Inside the conference room, Daniel finally sensed something had changed. The hallway had become unusually busy. Voices echoed outside. A police radio crackled faintly. He stood and walked toward the door. The moment he opened it, he froze. Standing several feet away were Laura, Nathan, 2 officers, and me. For the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel looked genuinely surprised. His eyes met mine. Neither of us spoke. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Finally, he forced a smile. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I looked directly into his eyes. "I think the better question is, what are you doing here?" Daniel glanced toward the officers. "This is all a misunderstanding." Laura stepped forward. "You were attempting to remove 2 minor children from school. I'm their father. No one is questioning that. Then why can't I take them home?" Laura calmly opened her folder. "Because a temporary court order was signed this morning." She handed a copy to one of the officers. "It restricts international travel involving Lily Carter and Noah Carter until further review." Daniel's confident expression faded. Only slightly, but enough for me to notice. He hadn't expected the court to move so quickly. One of the officers spoke calmly. "Sir, we'd like you to remain here while we verify a few details." Daniel laughed softly. "Seriously? This is ridiculous. I've just returned from Europe." Nathan quietly replied. "That's interesting." Daniel looked at him. "Why?" "Because we've collected evidence indicating you never left the United States." For the first time, Daniel said nothing. The hallway became completely silent. Even the receptionist stopped typing. Everyone waited. Daniel looked from Nathan, Thora, to me. His confident smile disappeared. He realized something. The lies that had protected him for nearly 2 years were beginning to collapse. Not because of one dramatic moment, but because every piece of evidence had quietly found its place. The forged documents, the financial records, the second identity, the apartment, the airline reservations. Each truth stood beside the next, leaving fewer and fewer places for deception to hide. Just then, another voice echoed from the front entrance. "Daniel." Everyone turned. A woman hurried into the hallway. "Vanessa." She looked frightened, confused. She wasn't supposed to be there. She stopped the moment she saw the police officers. Then she looked at Daniel. "What is happening?" Daniel opened his mouth, but before he could answer, Laura removed one final document from her folder. It was the certified copy of the forged emergency custody petition. She held it up where everyone could see. "Perhaps," she said calmly, "we should begin with this." Daniel's face lost every trace of color, because he recognized the document immediately, and for the first time, he understood that his carefully constructed story was no longer his to control. For a long moment no one said a word. The hallway outside the conference room had become so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the school's air conditioner. Daniel stared at the custody petition in Laura's hands. Not with confusion. With recognition. He knew exactly what it was. He also knew that it was never supposed to end up in a courtroom, or in front of police officers, or in front of me. Vanessa looked from Daniel to Laura, then back again. Daniel. Her voice trembled. What document is she talking about? Daniel forced a smile. It's nothing. It's just paperwork they're misunderstanding. Laura didn't argue. She simply handed a certified copy to one of the officers. This petition was never filed with the court because it contains significant inconsistencies. It is now part of the ongoing investigation. The officer nodded and quietly continued reviewing it. Vanessa stepped closer. You told me the divorce was already finalized. My heart skipped. Daniel looked at her but said nothing. You said, she continued, that Emily had agreed to shared custody months ago. Silence. She searched his face, waiting for him to deny it. He couldn't. That silence answered her question better than any words could have. She slowly turned toward me. You didn't know about any of this? I shook my head. No. I found out only a few weeks ago. Vanessa's shoulders slumped. Tears filled her eyes. I thought. She stopped, struggling to continue. I thought you had both moved on. For the first time I realized something unexpected. Vanessa looked shocked. Not guilty. There was a difference. Nathan quietly leaned toward me. Watch her reaction. I did. She wasn't acting like someone caught in a lie. She looked like someone discovering one. Laura calmly laid another folder on the conference table. Inside were copies of the airline reservations, the financial transfers, the property records. Each document had been organized in chronological order. She spoke with the same steady voice she had used since the beginning. No one here needs to make assumptions. We'll let the documents speak. One by one, she placed them on the table. The mortgage for Willow Heights, the joint bank account, the one-way tickets to Portugal, the forged custody paperwork, the timeline Nathan had assembled. Daniel's expression changed with every page. He didn't interrupt. He couldn't. The evidence wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply consistent. One of the officers looked up. Mr. Carter, is there anything you'd like to clarify? Daniel finally spoke. I never intended to hurt anyone. His words echoed through the hallway. I couldn't help thinking how different they sounded from an apology. He wasn't saying he hadn't done those things. He was saying he hadn't meant for them to have consequences. Laura answered before I could. Intent can be important. So can actions. Vanessa picked up the airline itinerary. Her eyes moved slowly across the passenger names. Daniel Brooks. Vanessa Collins. Sophia Collins. Lily Carter. Noah Carter. She frowned. Daniel. You told me Emily had agreed. He looked down. You told me the children were excited. Still no answer. Then she looked at me again. Did you know about these tickets? I felt tears sting my eyes. No. I found out because one of the reservation pages was accidentally left in our printer. Vanessa closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked at Daniel with quiet disbelief. You were going to let me board that plane believing everything was legal. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. Just then Diane Foster received a message on her work phone. She read it carefully. Then looked at the officers. The digital forensic review is complete. Everyone waited. The anonymous CPS reports originated from the same source. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply stated the finding. The account used to submit them was accessed from a device registered to Daniel Carter. The hallway fell silent again. Daniel lowered his head. No one needed to argue anymore. The evidence was speaking for itself. Mrs. Harris, the school principal, quietly approached me. Lily and Noah are asking for you. I looked toward the classroom where they had been waiting. Laura nodded gently. Go. They need their mother. I walked down the hallway with trembling legs. When I opened the classroom door, Noah ran straight into my arms. "Mom!" I held him tightly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Lily wrapped her arms around both of us. "Are we going home?" I smiled through my tears. "Yes. We're going home together." Those words carried more meaning than they had ever carried before. Back in the conference room, Daniel remained seated. Nathan quietly gathered the folders. Every document had been copied, every timeline verified, every financial record preserved. The investigation that had once focused on me had completely changed direction. Weeks earlier, I had been trying to prove I was a good mother. Now, no one was questioning that anymore. Instead, the questions centered on how such an elaborate deception had been built in the first place. As I prepared to leave the school with Lily and Noah, I looked back one last time. Daniel was still sitting in the conference room. For years, I had imagined that if I ever discovered a betrayal this deep, I would scream. I would demand answers. I would want revenge. Instead, I felt something entirely different. I felt tired. Not because justice had failed, but because carrying someone else's lies for so long had been exhausting. I no longer wanted to carry them. I wanted to carry my children home. As we walked toward the parking lot, Nathan caught up with me. He smiled softly. "This isn't the end." "I know. It's the beginning of getting your life back." For the first time since Daniel boarded that imaginary flight to Europe, I believed him. 3 months later, I stood outside the courthouse holding Lily's hand while Noah chased pigeons across the small plaza. The autumn air carried the first hint of winter. Everything looked ordinary. People hurried to work with coffee cups in their hands. Parents pushed strollers. Friends laughed as they crossed the street. The world had kept moving while my own had been falling apart. For a long time that had made me angry. Now, it gave me comfort. Life doesn't stop because our hearts are broken. It quietly reminds us that one day, ours will begin beating normally again. The legal process hadn't been quick. It rarely is. There had been hearings, financial reviews, interviews, stacks of paperwork that seemed taller every week, the forged custody documents, the anonymous CPS reports, the hidden financial transfers. Every piece had been carefully examined. What once felt like isolated events became part of a much larger picture. By the end of the review, no one questioned why the investigation had shifted away from me. The facts spoke more clearly than rumors ever could. The temporary travel restrictions remained in place while the court worked through the family matters, ensuring Lily and Noah stayed where they were safe and familiar. Daniel looked very different the last time I saw him in court. Not because of what he was wearing, because of what was missing. The confidence, the certainty, the belief that he could control every conversation. He sat quietly beside his attorney, answering questions when asked. He no longer smiled at me. He no longer pretended everything was a misunderstanding. At one point, our eyes met across the courtroom. For years, I searched those eyes for love. That day, I searched them for honesty. I couldn't tell whether he finally understood the damage he had caused. But I knew something else. I didn't need his understanding to heal. Vanessa testified during one of the hearings. When she entered the courtroom, she looked nervous. She glanced toward me before taking her seat. Later that afternoon during a break, she quietly walked over. "I owe you an apology." I looked at her. I believed what he told me. I believed your marriage had ended long before we met. She wiped away a tear. If I had known the truth. She couldn't finish the sentence. I nodded gently. "I believe you." And I did. Not because it erased my pain, but because the evidence had shown she had also been living inside Daniel's carefully constructed lies. She hadn't built the deception. She had been caught inside it, just like I had. Several weeks after the hearings ended, I received a letter from Child Protective Services. I held the envelope for almost 10 minutes before opening it. Some fears don't disappear overnight. Inside was a single page. It confirmed that the concerns regarding my parenting had been fully resolved. The case was officially closed. I read those words again and again. Then I cried. Not because I had won. because I had finally been seen for who I truly was. A mother who never stopped fighting for her children. Nathan stopped by the house that weekend. He carried a small potted maple tree. "I thought your yard could use something new." I laughed. "You solved one of the biggest mysteries of my life. And you brought me a tree?" He smiled. "Trees remind us of something important." "What's that?" "They don't grow overnight. Neither does healing." Together we planted it near the front porch. Lily poured the first watering can over the roots. Noah insisted on patting the soil down with his tiny hands. Every time I looked at that tree afterward, I remembered that even after the harshest seasons, new growth is still possible. Months passed. The house slowly felt like home again. The dining table no longer held stacks of evidence. It held homework, board games, cookie recipes. The back porch no longer echoed with difficult conversations. It filled with laughter again. Lily won second place in her school art competition. Her drawing showed a mother holding two children's hands beneath a bright sunrise. Across the top she had written, "Home is where you feel safe." When she showed it to me, I hugged her tighter than ever. Noah, meanwhile, decided he wanted to become a veterinarian because, according to him, dinosaurs are too hard to find. For the first time in a long while, I laughed without forcing it. One evening, Megan asked me a question I'd been avoiding. "If you could go back, would you change anything?" I thought about it carefully. Would I erase the pain? The sleepless nights? The fear? The betrayal? Part of me wanted to say yes, but another part knew the truth. If I changed everything, I answered softly, I might never discover how strong I really was. She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." People often ask whether I hate Daniel now. The honest answer surprises them. No. Hate is heavy. I carried enough weight for one lifetime. I chose to put it down. That doesn't mean I forgot. It doesn't mean trust magically returned. Forgiveness, at least for me, wasn't pretending nothing happened. It was refusing to let someone else's choices control the rest of my life. A year after everything began, Lily and Noah helped me plan a small family picnic at the same park where we used to spend our weekends. The sun was warm. Cooper chased squirrels across the grass. Noah laughed so hard he fell over trying to fly a kite. Lily sketched the lake in her notebook. As I watched them, I realized something that brought tears to my eyes. For months, I had fought to keep my family together. In the end, I discovered that a family isn't defined by the people who leave. It's defined by the people who stay. The ones who choose love, who choose honesty, who choose each other. Sometimes I still think about the morning Daniel told me he was flying to Europe. I remember kissing him goodbye. I remember believing every word he said. For a long time that memory embarrassed me. Now it doesn't. Trusting someone who promised to love you isn't weakness. Breaking that trust is. And if there's one lesson I hope anyone listening to my story remembers, it's this. The truth may arrive slowly. Sometimes it takes weeks. Sometimes months. Sometimes years. But lies are fragile. They demand constant protection. The truth simply waits. And when it finally steps into the light, it doesn't have to shout. It only has to exist. Today, when I lock the front door each evening, I no longer do it because I'm afraid. I do it because I know what peace feels like. Lily still leaves little drawings on the refrigerator. Noah still fills the house with questions about dinosaurs. Cooper still waits by the window every afternoon. Life isn't perfect. It never will be. But it's real. And after everything we survived, real is more than enough.